Real primitive, the old green farmhouse. It's a beautiful day on Delmarva. Greetings, kind friends. Primitive decor can be fun for the homeowner and is for mostly interior, but living it is another story. Primitive houses were as pretty as primitive farm machinery. At advanced ages, nobody wants to farm extensively with a Farmhouse Super C in the burning sun, nor deal with the problems of old houses, such as drafts in the wintertime, lack of modern inventions, plumbing issues, or lopsided bouncing floors. In spite of these, pleasant memories remain from the old house that stood watch over us. I managed to live a short duration in two such houses. There was a little bungalow at the end of a fairly long dirt lane with fields on either side. It was pretty small, but so was I. It had a nice screened-in porch with a tin roof, nice-sized cedar trees, and people who actually came to visit. And up the lane stood an old, plain Victorian-type farmhouse. My granddad told me a man built it who had a number of daughters and then later added another two-story section. It also had and still has a tin roof and a screened-in porch. There was a Bartlett pear tree in the backyard that was always loaded with pears in late summer. An old chicken house that Dad made us work, filling the hanging feeders. Several sheds, a pump house, and old outbuildings, still covered in barn red. The house became rented out as a duplex for many years, and saw a good number of children grow up and then move on. This is my real experience with primitive. There were no antiques and quaint pictures on the walls. The house itself is an antique. I don't know when the green asbestos shingles were put on the old green farmhouse, but they've always been there, as long as I can remember. Asbestos shingles and siding had many advantages. It's still holding up well to this day. It hasn't faded. It insulates, and it's fireproof. And it has hindered any efforts to demolish or burn it. As the house went through numerous upgrades through the decades, maybe it just wasn't worth it to the present owner. It now needs much TLC and repairs. The floors are well over an inch out of level, and they bounce as you walk over them. Even a former occupant, who is now 70, said that as a boy, he couldn't play marbles on his bedroom floor because they would roll to the wall. The EPA says you can't control burn a house and the asbestos, and the cost of removing them is prohibitive. Bungalow with its cedar trees and all its outdoor beauty is long gone, but the green farmhouse remains for now. The farmhouse saw many wonderful and interesting times. In primitive and country decor, white domesticated geese saw its way into artwork. But here are some real geese that my grandfather raised, which the old farmhouse witnessed. My father, with his 8mm wind-up home movie camera, filmed a big goose drive from one part of the farm to another. Geese can be herded and driven just like cattle, as they were moved right down the country road. I imagine they made some serious noise of honking and stomping. The farmhouse witnessed our family reunions with its beautiful tall trees lining the lane. Adults sat on the grass and talked. The kids played with no electronic devices. That might have been me wading through the soybeans. It was even safe to ride your bicycle on the paved road. The adults pictured here are all but departed, and the children are in their 60s and 70s. In the mid-1980s, I lived in the farmhouse duplex with my grandparents on the lower floor and myself upstairs. My upstairs bedroom was midway between the garden, which my grandfather tended, and the back door. As the window was up, I was in bed and heard my grandmother yell out a message to my grandfather out in the garden. "Robert, Hollis Reagan called and said," "Who?" "Hollis Reagan called. He says he's coming over soon." "He's coming at noon?" "I said he's coming soon." I immensely loved sitting on the old porch in the summertime talking with my grandparents, watching fireflies or listening to the night sounds, maybe even a gentle rain on the porch's tin roof. I listened more than talked, as my grandfather could talk the legs off an iron pot. One summer evening, the three of us were on the porch. I and my grandfather were there, and my grandmother came in fussing about him watering the garden during a dry spell. You see, the old water pump couldn't handle much of a load, and she wanted to do the dishes. He tried to calm her down by saying, 30 minutes, just 30 minutes, and I'll turn it off." A very soft rain started as the three of us sat on the porch and talked, but the rain started to get heavier. Then, in the dark, she takes a quick look at her watch and says, "All right, your 30 minutes are up. Go shut the hose off." There was also a wild cherry tree that the birds loved, which I later found out as clean, wet laundry that I had hung on a nearby clothesline got messed up. And a mockingbird sang incessantly in the nearby thicket. Why would I leave this country paradise? Everyone who lived in the old green farmhouse moved out and moved on. I got married and left. And later, my grandparents fell into ill health. They left. The character in the novel You Can't Go Home Again noted, "You can't go back home to your family, back home to your childhood, back home to a young man's dreams of glory and of fame, back home to places in the country, back home to the old forms and system of things which once seemed everlasting, but which are changing all the time. He further ponders our final departure as to lose the earth you know for greater knowing, to lose the life you have for greater life, to leave the friends you loved for greater loving, to find a land more kind than home, more large than earth. I will always lament the temporary state of blessings, but in the land of the living there are plenty of new memories to make and cherish. And from the land of pleasant living, take care.